Wait.
And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him?" And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme, can't say that, his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world.
Okay, so what is the bad news that we have here?
Too many people following the man.
Too many people are following the beast, the dragon, right?
Beast, yes.
Okay. And what is this beast like?
He blasphemes against God,
That's
his name, and his tabernacle.
The temple.
yeah.
He wants to bring war.
Especially on the saints, right?
Yeah.
Especially on the saints. So it doesn't sound like a good time for the saints, right?
Everyone wants to distract away from the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world.
Right.
And when, just the context, this is the sea beast, and this is the 42 months. So 598 to 1798.
Yeah. So definitely now, and this first beast, this is the beast that received the deadly wound, right? It kind of reminded me of all of those villain movies. When you think the villain's dead, and then he comes back. It's like, oh, I thought they were done, because then we read page 11 through 14. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens there.
Reminds me of the Greek beast Hydra.
Oh, where you cut off one head.
Cut off one head and two come out.
And that's actually a lot of that going on here. So let's read 11 through 14. So we kill this first one, and then what happens?
Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound is healed. He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword. And
Okay, so now we have a second beast. So just as we have the mortal wound of the first beast, that was really bad. We now have a second beast. Okay, so now we have what, double the trouble now, right? Okay, and what kind of things does he do? Pretty much the same as the first, right?
He rises up out of the earth instead of the sea.
Okay,
And we often mistake him as the lamb-like beast. He's not the lamb-like beast, he's the beast with the lamb-like horns. Horns symbolize power and authority. The spirit of prophecy indicates that they are Protestantism and Republicanism. Not the Republican Party, but a democratic representative form of government.
right. Which gives it kind of that, we look at democracy as being the more benign of governance.
Well, any true democracy devolves into despotism.
Yeah.
Because it's the authority or the use of the masses on the land.
Right.
But our system of government is designed to protect the money.
And so it has what makes it lamb-like is it has a feeling of goodness about it. The power is, as I said, benign, which means good. It has a feeling of goodness, but here it is belonging to the beast. And so as Christians, is it a power that we can truly trust? No.
No.
And I find of interest here, we focus so much on the Catholic Church. I think we're not necessarily focusing on exactly the right place. The lamb-like beast sets up an image to the first beast. An image is a likeness, and causes all to worship the image, not the first beast. So America is not going to cause everyone to become Catholic. It's simply going to set up an image like the Catholic Church, which is religion by force.
That's all the daughters,
What?
all the daughters
Yeah,
of the Catholic
Yeah.
Church.
And that's what the Catholic Church has lately especially been calling Protestant churches, is just their children. Bring the children back to the fold.
universal, and
Yeah.
the Pope sees himself as the vicar of Christ to the entire planet.
Mhm.
And the Catholic Church has held many convocations where they bring all the world religious leaders together in one place. Hindu, Islam, Muslim, everybody.
Right. Yeah, in fact, lately, I don't think that at least in the last 10 years or so, I think there was a push, not necessarily to encourage proselytizing as much as just bringing in kind of more of a unity. You can stay the religion you want, but you still belong to us, kind of thing. Or we still belong.
Francis, I believe it was Francis, declared that proselytization is an act of violence against Semitic culture.
Right. Okay, now let's take a look at 15 through 17. To learn a little bit more about the character of this beast. So verses Revelation 13 verses 15. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both great and small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive the mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. And that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So we have, it's kind of what we've been speaking, we have the first beast, and we have all the things that he did, which were bad. We have the second beast who does all the same, but he takes it a step more, doesn't he? Including bringing back in the image of the first beast. And so when we're talking about prophecy and the end of days, it does not look good, does it? But today our focus is on the promises. Now, when we see God's prophecy fulfilled, what does that do about our trust in what he says?
It should strengthen it.
It should strengthen it, okay? Why is it important that it be strengthened?
So we're not deceived by deceptions of what's to come.
Okay, to prevent deception is definitely an important part of understanding prophecy. So if we understand the prophecy, we're not deceived by the counterfeits, right? Are there any other purposes that prophecy gives to us?
Hope.
Yes, hope is a very important part. Why does it give us hope?
Because of what happens, because of the good stuff that happens after this.
Right. Because if we're in the midst of the storm and we feel that our ship is about to sink, our only hope is that there's something better at the end, but the storm will eventually end. Probably the worst part in any of, when you think about the worst moment in your life, did it ever feel like it would end? Usually that's what made the despair worst, is the feeling that this would never end. I've been struggling with this thing for years. I've been struggling with this for months. It seems to only be getting worse and worse. It will never end. When you have gotten to the other end of that, and you look back and it's like, oh, it had an end. Sometimes I think God purposely gives us mini storms to help teach us this lesson in life. In fact, we need to have those mini storms to teach these lessons in life. I remember one time when my husband and I were going through a particularly rough period of time because of some factors. And the only thing that helped me get through that was remembering, okay, I remember when we had that other rough time, and I thought that was bad, but we made it through, and we made it through well. And then we had this other rough time, and it was bad, but we made it through, well. I'll make it through this one too. You know? And that's an important part of prophecy, is God has not only prophesied the evil that is coming and that we should expect, but he has prophesied the good. And I would like us to now take a look at Psalms 46, because I think Psalms 46 as an English teacher, I found this psalm really, really cool. So structurally, but also in its message too. So let's take a look at Psalms 46. And let's go ahead and start with just reading it all the way through, and then we're going to look at its parts. So if there's someone it's only 11 verses, if there's someone who would like to read Psalms 46.
How about through each Selah?
Okay.
I'll read the first. God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Though the earth is transformed and the mountains are toppled into the depths of the sea, though the waters roar and foam and the mountains quake and surge. Selah.
Okay, so I'm reading 4 through 7 through the next Selah.
There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, just as the break of dawn. The nations raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Keep going.
Or someone can read the next one.
Well, behold, the word of God, who has brought destruction in the earth. He makes all to cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and can the spear into. He burns the chariots with fire. Come, strive and know that I am God. I will be, for my glasses. Somebody else finish.
I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Okay, now there's the English part of me that loves the structure of this. When I was kind of mapping this out, and when you see the structure, I think this makes this particular psalm really special. This psalm begins and ends in the same place. Where does it begin and end?
God is our refuge and strength.
Yes, it begins and ends with God is our refuge and our strength. And then it gives us the argument. So the first argument describes good things or bad things.
In fact, I would say it's a chiasm. This verse 2 corresponds with the second one.
In some ways, if you look at verses 2 and 3, therefore we will not fear, even though the earth is moved, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled through this, though the mountains shake with its swelling. What is being impacted in those verses?
Sure.
The earth is being impacted. So the earth is in tumult. And we can think of like, earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes and,
Fires now.
fires, the earth is being shifted and is unstable in these verses, right? But what do we read in verses 4 and 5?
But there's a stillness.
There is a river whose stream shall be made glad in the city of God. So we have a river, nature. The holy place of the tabernacle, the Most High. God is in the midst of her, and she shall not be moved. God shall help her just at the break of dawn. So is that tumultuous? No, it's stability. So we had nature and tumult, and now we have nature that won't be moved. God is in the midst of the river. Everything is, break of dawn. Dawn is like the most peaceful time of the day, isn't it? The wind hasn't yet kicked up. The waters are still. The birds are just starting. That is what God presents to us as an image of heaven. And that's still quiet of heaven after giving us this image of tumult. Okay, and then what do we see in verse 6?
Nations range, kingdoms range. The earth mounts when he makes his voice.
Okay, so what's in tumult now? It's not nature this time.
Nations.
It's the nations. The people are in tumult, right?
Remember, nations is goyim, from which we get the word Gentile.
So not only is nature in tumult, but the peoples on the earth are in tumult, right? They are raging. The kingdoms are moving. You're still seeing it today. When I was growing up, the borders seemed pretty stable. And then 1988 hit and they shifted.
What happened to the USSR?
Suddenly we had like a dozen new countries. And then even now we have shifting of nations. In fact, we'll probably be hearing something about that tonight. So they're not staying still. There's tumult, there's strife going on as the nations are moving. But what do we have in verse 7?
Yahweh Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts, is with us. The God of Yaakov is our fortress.
In the middle of this, we're being reminded that God is our fortress. Do we need that reminder?
Yes.
He is the Lord, he is Yahweh, he is the self-existent one, the eternal one, and he comes in charge of his heavenly armies.
So let us see what happens in verses 8 and 9.
Praise.
It's kind of praise, but it's actually, to me, it speaks almost of more tumult again.
And I find we tend to, I've heard this, be still and know that I am God, to be a peaceful, calm thing. In the context, that's not what's going on. What's going on is God is fighting our battles for us. He's breaking the bow. He's shattering the spear. He's burning up the shields. You sit and be still and know that I am God.
Be in your refuge. God reminds you to go to your
There's
refuge.
chaos all around you. Let God do the fighting.
Acknowledging, like lifting him up. and acknowledging that he's the one in control.
Well, and I think in some ways it goes more than just acknowledging that it's in control, but trusting that he's in control. Sometimes I know God's in control, but I've got to do this thing, right?
Verse 7 there, when you start, come behold, like we have to see for ourselves,
Yeah,
to build, to trust, you have to see it.
I think of the corresponding verse, beast or vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's interesting, we're called upon to mimic the character of God. Yet when we look at Exodus chapter 34, what is the character of God? Yahweh, Yahweh, and showing mercy unto thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. Nevertheless, not clearing the guilty. We don't emulate that part of God's character because we're not in authority to judge. But God judges, and we're to let God be God.
So we have the God taking care of, he's going to be the one that's going to fix everything. Now, of course, if you pay much attention to politics, you will hear this person will solve this problem, or this person will take care of this issue. But does any person have the ability to do that? No. No, if God wills it, it will continue.
Read my lips.
No. Yes. So no one can, they can try as hard as they might. But unless God wills it, peace cannot be truly attained. And so we see here that only God can cure to fix things. I'm reminded of a story that Rick was listening to last night. Whose story was that again you were listening to?
I don't know, depends on what you're talking about.
The archaeologist's father.
Oh, there, Michael Hassel.
Hassel.
His grandfather.
His grandfather, okay, his grandfather was in the Nazi army.
He fought in World War I. He was a sniper, and then he was converted to the SDA faith between the wars. And the German army didn't take the kids to start with; they took the ones with military experience to start with. So he was drafted immediately.
Right, and as a German, and he did claim religious, as a non-combatant.
He was a non-combatant, but you know how that goes over in the Nazi army.
Yeah. But the story that strikes me that he tells of his grandfather is toward the end of the war, and his commanding officer, off the record, asks him in private. Of course, Hitler's trying to form his great Third Reich, the
1,000 years.
1,000-year New World Order of peace led by the German people. And his commanding officer asks him, so do you think Hitler will be successful? And after verifying, like, okay, I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this, right? He says, like, no, because the Bible tells me so. To which the officer's like, what do you mean? And so he gives him the Daniel 2 Bible study, showing that there will not be a whole new world order after Rome, not until Jesus comes. And so we know this from the Bible that there won't be, so we hear stories like we're going to all get together, we're going to have peace. And even in the Bible, it says that peace, but there is no peace in the last days, right?
What's even more interesting about that story is his commanding officer asked him to repeat what he had said to a group of officers he brought in later. And they were Bible scholars. And they verified, yes, that's what it says.
It took a lot of courage in Nazi Germany, I'm sure, to say that, because it was not politically correct. But but it is what the Bible teaches us, and we can trust what the Bible teaches us because we see over and over again that is true. And we also see, and then, so we have in this psalm, we have God is our refuge, we have tumultuous nature, we have nature under God's control, being steady and not being moved. We have tumultuous nations, we have God as our ruler. Be still and know that I am God, and the destruction of the old earth. And then how does this end? Again, God is our refuge, just as where it began. Reminder again, God is in control. And so when we're looking at prophecy, it's cool to look at all of the ways that, all the horrible things that are coming up. The Bible predicts this, the Bible predicts this. But we have to always remember that we got to keep that going to the next step, which is God is in control. He is our refuge. We don't have to be afraid. We are witnesses to those end days. And it is, in some ways, a privilege to be that witness. Let's take a look at the other Psalms that they covered that I found really interesting was Psalm 75. Let's take a look at that one.
Thanks to you, O God. We give thanks, for your name is heard near. Men declare your wondrous works. When I select a appropriate time, it is I who judges with equality. The earth and all who dwell in it melt. It is I also have firmly set in pillars.
Now, what I was liking about this particular psalm is it deals a lot with judgment. One of the things that make our church unique is our understanding of God's judgment. And one of the things that it says here is, I choose the proper time. I will judge uprightly. That's God speaking, right? There is a time of judgment. There is a specific time in judgment. And that's what our church teaches, is that we have a specific time of judgment. And when is that judgment?
After the 1,000 years. While we're doing the 1,000 years, really.
Yeah, we as people will be judging God. But God starts his judgment in the last days, doesn't he? He starts his judgment, and we call it the investigative judgment. That's not a term you'll find in the Bible, but it's a concept we find in the Bible, even as early as Psalm 75.
Ezekiel chapter 9, the angel with the inkhorn is told, start with the people of God. Start with my sanctuary.
And so what do we expect with this judgment? If someone can continue reading from verse 4.
I say to the proud, do not boast, and to the wicked, do not lift up your horn. Do not lift up your horn against heaven or speak with an outstretched neck. Picture your head held high, your nose up in the air. For exaltation comes neither from the east, nor the west, nor out of the desert. But it is God who judges. He brings down one and exalts another. For a cup is in the hand of Yahweh, full of foaming wine mixed with spices. He pours from his cup, and all the wicked of the earth drink it down to the dregs.
So what is this metaphor with wine? What is he trying to say with that? And what other images do we see when we think about that one? Come to think of it. Do we see that imagery anywhere else? Yeah, Revelation.
14.
And who is drinking the wine in Revelation?
The nations that are following the beast.
Yep. The nations following the beast.
Revelation 18, that she of Babylon that caused the nations to drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. There's a lot of adjectives in there. But wine being the symbol of blood. And Revelation 14 describes blood up to the altars of the horses. And there is a definite earthly consequence to sin. There is definite destruction, and the wages of sin truly is death.
Well, in verse 10, it says, all the horns of the wicked will be cut off, but the horns of the righteous shall be exalted. So that's the end product of the Lord's judgment.
What do horns represent in prophecy?
Authority.
Authority and power.
So you were expected the horns of the altar, where the blood was marked, to symbolize my sin has been purged because I have broken God's authority. But this blood covers that sin and is a record of that covering. We also have horns in Revelation and Daniel considerably. These horns represent kings, authorities, powers.
And so what is the psalm saying about who will receive the authority or who will be able to retain the authority about?
Nobody but you.
It says the horns of the righteous shall be exalted.
Revelation chapter 3, the final verse, says he has given them the right to sit on his throne. Though to them who overcome, even as he overcame and sat with his Father on his throne. We are to be judges of God and with his actions. We are to rule with him on his throne for 1,000 years.
Yeah, it says we are to serve him in his sanctuary.
But here in Psalm 75, that to begin the verse 7, it says just clearly, but God is the judge.
Yes. He is the one who decides. And when he says he puts down one and exalts the other, I almost have a vision, kind of when Jesus said, if he who wants to be first must be last, and he who is last shall be first. I almost have that kind of image with that in there, where God, he doesn't choose the people you expect to be the people on top. He chooses people who probably are going, well, what? No, me? No. Right? Have you ever had that experience where you're like, oh, no, why are you calling me? Why am I the one?
I believe it was Grover Cleveland, who was elected on like the 40th ballot and had no plans to become president whatsoever. In fact, it was Grant and somebody else that were running against each other. But there's a quote from, and I believe it's attributed to John Adams. Anybody who seeks office is immediately automatically disqualified.
Well, I know I am a high school teacher. I was just telling someone this story this morning. For 1 week when I was in college, I worked as a substitute teacher for our local Christian school for grades, I think it was 6 through 8, something like that. Maybe it had been 4. I think it might have even been as low as 4th. I can't remember. But I served as an elementary substitute teacher and realized that I did not like elementary school, especially the youngest grade. It was not my forte. I was so glad that week is over. And mainly the reason is I like my personal space. And that young children don't believe in personal space. Even with my son, it's like, personal space, please. He's always wanting to be right here. I don't know why God gave me autistic children, probably to cure me of this one. For my daughter, she was always like attached to my hip, even when she's 5'9". But I like my personal space, and I'm like, oh, you know, I can't do this. And then I had children of my own, and my daughter was going into kindergarten, and I looked and it's like, they need help. But I really don't want to do this. Okay, I'll do it. And I did it. And people seem to appreciate it, and it worked. But sometimes God will call you into places where you're like going, kicking and screaming, because that is where you're needed. And so in this way too, it's like God pulls up people who are not expecting that they are worthy, that they deserve that place. And those people who are clamoring to get it, he's like, no.
He found Saul in the luggage.
He did.
Yes.
And Saul knew he was being called, and he purposely hid, because he's like, no, I don't want to go. He found David as a shepherd boy. And you look at all these different stories of people God called.
When Moses wanted to lead, he was disqualified.
Right?
As soon as he said, no way, then that's when God picked him.
Right.
Yeah, he was way out in the middle of nowhere.
Like, who, me? I've been so away from people, you think I can actually talk to them now? But yeah, so this psalm is a good one, because it does, you know, it reminds us that God's judgment is coming. There is an investigative judgment. There is a time where all this chaos that we are seeing will be judged, but also that the righteous will get their due. The people who really deserve to be there will be given that right, whether they're ready for it or not. Sometimes.
I found this little snippet to be of interest here too. Some translations say, so for exaltation comes neither from the east nor the west nor from the south. Out of the desert is what my translation says here. But what direction's left on?
The north, and I did notice that.
And God is described as the God as his throne is in the north. Where in the sanctuary is God's throne? You have the Holy of Holies, but in the holy place, the throne is represented by the table of shewbread. It's the table of presence. The presence or the face of God.
Yeah, because isn't the sanctuary faced east-west?
The north side was the table of shewbread, so the opening was to the east. So that when you worship Yahweh's throne, you were facing with your back to the sun.
Yeah. And there was probably good reason for God to set that up in that way, too, because sun worship was such a prevalent icon in other faiths around, that he had to break them of making those connections in that particular way. Okay. Now let's take a look at Psalm 67. What does that one tell us?
Not be merciful to us, but bless us, and cause his face to shine upon us. That your way may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations. Let peoples praise you, O God, let all the peoples praise you. Oh, let the nations be glad and sing for joy. For you shall judge the people righteously and govern the nation on earth. Say, Let people praise you, O God, let all people praise you. Then the earth shall yield her increase. God, our O God, shall bless us. God shall bless us, and all the ends of the earth shall fear him.
So what are we learning from this psalm? Especially in light of prophecy.
God is a personal God. This first verse is loaded. May God be gracious. Grace is him. It is someone superior stooping down low to the ground and acknowledging someone else. And cause his face to shine upon us. No other God is like that. I speak to you face to face. I show you my face. We just talked about the table of sugar, the table of face, the face of God. He's a personal God who is gracious and blesses us directly. We don't come to him begging for some mercy from a wrathful, vengeful God. But really, I think that in our modern parlance, the word is love. God actually loves us. He wants to be with us.
And he wants to show us his. Now, was God able to show his face to anyone in the Old Testament?
Well, he tried from Mount Sinai. And he declared in Exodus 19, I will make you a nation of priests unto your God. And they said, don't do that. Don't speak to us out of the cloud. We'll die.
Yeah, even his voice was too much for
In
them,
his
right?
voice. And so, I believe there's plan A, plan B, plan C.
Well, no,
God
wait.
is always trying to get close to humanity. I mean,
Yeah.
we have him telling Moses to prepare a place for the sanctuary so that he could dwell among the people.
Mhm.
And and God says, I've just redeemed Israel. I've just taken Israel out of Egypt, and now he wants to live with them physically.
Mhm.
He wants to get as close as possible. And then we have Christ, who actually becomes one of us. So this is a theme throughout the whole Bible, where God wants to be as close to us as possible. Even created the Sabbath so that we could be close.
And I love verses 3 and 4. Let the peoples praise you, O God. There's a slight nuance here. Let the nations be glad. Remember what nations is. Nations is goyim. That's the Gentiles. Let the people, let our people, let your people praise you. Let other nations, let the foreign nations be glad and sing for joy.
And this is after we just read another psalm where it talked about him destroying the nation,
Goyim, yeah.
right? In some ways, I kind of think of this as like when a conqueror enters a city, he's conquered. What is the attitude that they expect from the people who are conquered?
I will make your enemies your footstool.
Usually, when a emperor comes in after conquering something, they try to come in as, what do they call it? The conquering hero, right? That we use the term conquering hero. They expect a parade. They expect cheering.
But they're captives.
How much do you think their captains are really putting into that cheering when they come in, right? But how will it be different when God comes in? Will he be he will be the true conquering hero, where the nations will be like, yes, it's not that you have come and conquered us, but you have come and freed us. The true conqueror, the true freedom giver is God. I was also thinking on the fact that it says his face to shine upon us. If we are not worthy to see God face to face, except through the person of Jesus right now, when is this time? When will we be worthy to see God's face? Second coming. And so that will be like one of our greatest blessings, is when we are finally able to see God's face. When his face can shine on us and we will not cower in fear, but we will sing praise. Right? We are looking at, we started off the lesson with Revelation 13. Let's jump back to Revelation real quick. And let's just, and I would like to look at Revelation 14. So in Revelation 13, we had all those bad news, all of the beasts and all the horrible things that they were doing. But then, just like in Psalms 46, where we had 2 signs, in Revelation 14, we get the other side. Then I looked, and behold, a lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of a loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. They sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. And those are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they were virgins, and they are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being firstfruits of God and the Lamb, and their mouths was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. So we had that image of the beast and all that follow him and all of the disasters that happened, but in the very next chapter, and you know that in the Bible we didn't have chapters. The very next thing, what do we see after the beast? We see victory. We see redemption. We see God and the glory of God. And so I think when I studied this lesson this week, this was what really stood out to me. Is when we're studying all of the tumults and things that are expected, when we look around us and see these things being fulfilled, hope is the most important thing for us to remember during this time. God has a promise for us, right? God has a promise for us that we are not going to be stuck in this storm, that we find refuge in him, no matter what the storm is doing to us outside or inside, right? And that there is an end to the storm, and that end is going to be the most glorious end of a storm that we have seen yet, right? Okay, it's 11 o'clock, so let's go ahead and end with prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for the promise that you have given us in prophecy. Not just warning us of the things to come, but of the promise of what will come after. So that when we are going through the trials and tribulations that your prophecy is foretold, we know that there is another prophecy that is more glorious than any other that this world has seen, and that is our hope for salvation. Be with us, that give us the strength that we have in whatever trials that we're going through, and whatever trials our world is going through. Help us to always hold that hope close, to give us strength. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a happy Sabbath. Enjoy the heat, because I understand it's going to cool down this next week.